You're going on that one.
Hello everybody, I'm Dr. Selina Lemay and I'd like to talk to you today about cancer. Cancer and how cancer affects our patients, but how you as nurses and students are going to have to look at patients and treat them. So let's start with, what is cancer anyway? Well, cancer is a mutant cell. It's a cell that's gone bad, or a cell that's gone rogue. It's a cell that can go undetected in our body and actually cause and wreak havoc throughout our body. Millions of people every year are diagnosed with cancer, and the number one cancer being diagnosed is skin cancer, mainly melanoma, and it's rising faster than any other type of cancer in the United States, and this is mainly due to sun exposure. All of us love the sun, they love the tanning beds, and unfortunately we're seeing it in the raise and the rate of melanoma. Here's a picture of an older woman with melanoma, so this is something you might encounter in the hospitals. Now, cancer rates are the highest in the Afro-American distribution, which is believed to be due because of a couple of factors. One is because of poverty rates, the other is poor access to health care, poor health conditions, and some tumor biology. So there are different factors that might contribute to that rate. Now, the death sentence used to be what was attributed to having cancer. When you got the news you had cancer, everybody thought it was a death sentence. That's greatly changed. The mortality rates have changed. Before, when you had cancer, you usually had a very low incidence of survival. Those are all different these days, where there's many people with cancer living past the 5-year rate. Now, education about cancer and its causes are imperative for our nursing, okay? Our nurses to know, but also for our patients' understanding. It's very important to understand cancer and understand how they can help themselves, okay? That is a role that nurses will be very much in tune with. How you can educate your patients to know what causes cancer and what to avoid with cancer and how to help them, okay? Cancer can be very disruptive to their social status, okay, or their social living. Also, their environment might need to change. Economically, it's a big impact. Family-wise, it's a big impact. And as nurses, it's one of your jobs or one of your duties to help the patients deal with those different things. Now, any cell in the body can develop cancer. Actually, we can have cancer in many cells all day long, but our body recognizes these rogue cells or mutant cells as invaders and destroys them. But cancer can happen in any cell in the body, especially when a cell has gone bad, okay? There's two different basic dysfunctions of cells that can cause cancer, okay? One is a defect in the cell proliferation. The other is a defect in cell differentiation. I'd like to talk about the cell differentiation first, or proliferation, the defect in cell proliferation. The body is designed to maintain a homeostasis, meaning it will produce a cell when another cell gets destroyed. It keeps this constant balance or constant teeter-totter effect in line so that the body doesn't have too many cells being created or too many cells being destroyed at the same time. It keeps this balance. What happens with cancer cells is they tend to divide at the same rate as the normal tissue, but when it divides, it can create two of one cell instead of just one more cell. So it's kind of like the pyramid marketing effect, where one will lead to two, and two will lead to 8, and 8 will lead to 32. I can't go on that, my math's not that good. But anyway, you get the idea of how they can double quickly or triple or quadruple quickly. That's what happens when there's a proliferation issue. Also, one thing that you'll see with cell proliferation issues is normally cells have boundaries, and when we have a cancer cells, it disputes the boundaries. It doesn't have the clear lining of this is mine and this is yours. Cancer cells just say what's yours is mine and what's mine is mine too. So those are some things that you see with cancer cells. They disrupt the body, and they're very invasive, or can be very invasive. They go where they feel like. Now, as cancer cells multiply, it doesn't take long for them to start to accumulate, to occur. And like I said before with the pyramid marketing, to grow and to grow and to grow and to amass huge cells, okay? We see that is in tumors. And the time that it takes to double is what we call a doubling time. So in cancer, oftentimes you'll hear tumors termed as, what is the doubling time? The time that it takes the size to actually double. Well, that's all part of cell proliferation. Hard word for me to say. In cell defect, as far as differentiation, okay, this is the process that's really, to me, quite amazing, okay? It reminds me of middle-age crisis. We are supposed to go from an infancy to an adulthood, to grow, to become more productive, to become more stable. And what happens sometimes is we actually revert to our youth. We go backwards in time, or go backwards, retrogress, okay, or regress. And that's exactly what happens to different cells, especially cancer cells. They reach that maturity and then they decide, it's not so good being grown up, and they have the Peter Pan syndrome and go backwards and become less mature. So when we look at cancer cells, we'll often speak about maturity or lack thereof, the immaturity. Some of the cells can actually regress so much that they will regress to the time of, or like their fetal development, okay? And when they're in that stage, they'll actually produce some hormones that can be found in their fetal development. And when we're testing for cancer, or if cancer's recurred, we can actually test to see if some of these fetal proteins or fetal hormones are present. Now, what can cause this degeneration, or what can cause this going backwards? Well, one of the main causes is exposures to carcinogens, exposures to viruses, exposures to genetic or having genetic alterations, and of course mutations. Any of those things can cause this retrograde, going backwards. All right? In midlife crisis, it usually happens you find somebody half your age. But in the cells with the cancer, they usually go backward to a more immature cells. Now, tumors. Let's talk about tumors a little bit. Tumors can be classified in two ways. One as benign, or another as malignant. Now, benign tumors are typically clusters of cells. They're not normal to the body, okay? But they're non-cancerous as well. They're usually slower growing. They usually have cells that are the same as the original tissue, so they're growing out of the same cells in the same tissue. They usually don't spread as much, and they stay localized, and seldom will they recur after treatment. So once they're removed, they usually tend to stay in the same spot. Malignant cells, okay, are the other classification. Malignant cells, or malignant tumors, are typically faster growing. They're atypical cells. They're atypical in size. They're atypical in shape. And they don't always have the same tissue organ as the tissues around them. They usually are very invasive and cause self-death, and they can reoccur after they've been removed. Now, cancer develops very orderly.